Hello and welcome to Newswire Afghanistan Special. I'm Jawad Tehami. Pakistan has laid emphasis on an inclusive political settlement and principle of non-interference in Afghanistan after the Taliban took over the capital of the war-torn country. The National Security Committee meeting with Prime Minister Imran Khan in the chair expressed the desire to work with the international community and the Afghan stakeholders on the matter and urged all the parties to respect law and protect human rights. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi reiterated the same as he received a phone call from US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Pakistan's Federal Minister for Information, Jawad Chaudhry, has said that Pakistan welcomes the peaceful transition of power and Pakistan will not take isolated decision of recognizing Taliban government. And to talk more about this, that how the Taliban takeover has been received in Pakistan and what future strategy Pakistan will adopt to deal with the rapidly evolving situation in Afghanistan. I am joined by Pakistan's foreign spokesperson, Mr. Zahid Hafeez Chaudhry. Mr. Chaudhry, thank you very much for your time. My first question to you is, despite propaganda of India and former Afghan government, Pakistan has been putting in positive efforts in the Afghan peace process. Now, with the Taliban's takeover, what role Pakistan can play for peace and stability in Afghanistan? And can Islamabad host the peace talks in near future?
Pakistan has a very clear objective as to what we want in Afghanistan, and our role is also defined by our objective. Our objective is very clear. We want to see peace in Afghanistan, and that's why we have continuously facilitated the Afghan peace process. The people of Afghanistan have suffered tremendously due to over 4 decades of conflict in Afghanistan. But after Afghanistan, after the people of Afghanistan, the country that has suffered the most due to conflict, due to this prolonged conflict, that is Pakistan. We've suffered over 80,000 casualties. We've suffered over $150 billion of economic losses. There are security implications for Pakistan of the security environment in Afghanistan, and that's why we believe that there can be and there is no other country that is more desirous of peace in Afghanistan than Pakistan. So far, due to Pakistan's role, the US and Taliban peace deal was made possible. Due to Pakistan's constructive role, the intra-Afghan negotiations started last year. We still continue to believe that there is still a need for political settlement. There still is need for an inclusive political solution, and we hope that all Afghan sides, they will show leadership, they'll come together and reach a political settlement for durable peace and stability in Afghanistan. The international community also has an important role to play in this regard. They must also remain engaged and encourage an inclusive political settlement in Afghanistan.
So, Mr. Chaudhry, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has been advocating that there is no military solution to the Afghan conflict after the takeover of Kabul. Should Pakistan follow the international sentiment or do what is in its best geostrategic and geoeconomic interest?
You know, Pakistan's geoeconomic and Pakistan's geostrategic interest is actually in sync with the international community's interest. Now, what does the international community want? With the few exceptions, we have always talked about the role of spoilers, but largely the international community, they also want to see peace in Afghanistan. And we believe that actually there is an opportunity in the form of international community's convergence on peace and reconciliation in Afghanistan. United States, we worked very closely with them with regard to the Afghan peace process. They also want to see peace in Afghanistan. And then the neighbors of Afghanistan, they also want to see peace in Afghanistan. And when we talk about other mechanisms like Troika, plus including Russia, China, United States, and Pakistan, everyone wants to see peace in Afghanistan. So our goal, our objectives are same. We all want to see peace in Afghanistan.
So, Mr. Chaudhry, India has been trying to posture itself as a major stakeholder in Afghanistan. Where does India stand after the Taliban takeover of the Afghan capital?
You know, even before that, we've always seen India's role as that of a spoiler. We believe that India has never, unfortunately, it's very unfortunate that they never played a constructive role in Afghanistan. They never facilitated the Afghan peace process. And now we believe that India, which has in the past tried to destabilize Afghanistan because they wanted to see a security vacuum in Afghanistan that could be exploited. They have been using Afghan soil for terrorism, for state-sponsored terrorism against Pakistan. So we believe that India will also learn from its mistakes in the past, and they will also do a course correction.
So, Mr. Chaudhry, how do you think these developments in Afghanistan affect Pakistan?
You know, as I told you earlier, when we say that we want to see peace in Afghanistan, and we also say that this is in our own interest also, there are three reasons. Number one, we believe that a security environment in Afghanistan has a direct bearing on the security situation in Pakistan. And second, we believe that we have hosted over 4 million Afghan refugees, and their dignified and time-bound return to Afghanistan will be possible when there will be peace in Afghanistan, when the security environment will improve, when there will be opportunities for these Afghans to return to their homeland. And third, Pakistan's economic vision. We want to see regional connectivity. We want to see economic integration. We want to see economic development and prosperity in this region. And all of that requires peace in Afghanistan. Only if there is peace in Afghanistan, we can realize our dream of connecting by road, by rail to the Central Asian republics. Only then we will be able to complete our dream project of gas pipeline, that is Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan gas pipeline. Only then we can realize our project of importing electricity from Central Asian republics through the project that is called CASA 1000. So all of that requires peace in Afghanistan. But most importantly, let me once again say, most importantly, we want to see peace in Afghanistan because that is in the interest of the people of Afghanistan. They also deserve peace. They also deserve development. And the regional interest also lies in peace in Afghanistan.
Pakistan wants to see peace in Afghanistan. Ms. Zahid, Hafeez, Chaudhry, Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesperson, thank you very much for your time at Newswire. And it's time for a short break now. After we return, we will try to analyze President Joe Biden's first comments after the Taliban takeover of Kabul. I will be joined by Dr. Huma Baqai, international relations expert, and Mr. Sarwar Naqvi, former ambassador. For that, please stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to Newswire, Afghanistan Special. I'm Jawad Tehami. After the Taliban swift takeover of Afghanistan, US President Joe Biden, in his first comments, has said that the United States mission was never supposed to be about nation building. Is Biden's statement a different way of reiterating the then US President's statement, who launched an invasion of Afghanistan 2 decades ago? President George W. Bush said, quote, "These carefully targeted actions are designed to disrupt the use of Afghanistan as a terrorist base of operations and to attack the military capability of the Taliban regime," unquote. Later on, President Barack Obama was determined to focus and upgrade resources to the war in Afghanistan while sending 30,000 troops there. Later on, he gave Hamid Karzai's government a deadline for the beginning of the withdrawal. moving on, then came President Donald Trump. In his signature style, he took a very hard stance on Afghanistan, for which he showed his will to increase the number of troops there. Simultaneously, he pressurized the Afghan government to strive for itself, saying, "Our support is not a blank check, our patience is not unlimited." Now, Trump's hardline disturbed the Taliban, who rejected his policy and said, quote, "For generations, we have fought this war. We are not scared. We are fresh and will continue this war until our last breath," unquote. And to talk more about this, we are now joined by Dr. Huma Baqai, international relations expert, and Mr. Ali Sarwar Naqvi is the former ambassador. Thank you very much for your time, both of you, at Afghanistan Special. I'll begin the discussion with you, Dr. Baqai. Do you see any similarities in the statement by George W. Bush and now President Biden's?
Well, frankly speaking, I'm going to start off, because you started off with so many quotes, I'm also going to begin this discussion with a quote, and this was what Fareed Zakaria said. He said, "There is no elegant way of losing a war." And that is exactly what has happened in Afghanistan. United States has lost it, was fumbling. There was absolute strategic confusion in successive American governments as to how to deal with the situation till Biden did what he did. And, when I was reading on it, I realized it's the same Biden when he was a 38-year-old senator and was asked to meet President Ford. He was the one who categorically and very forcefully also spoke about the withdrawal of United States of America from Vietnam. I know Anthony Blinken has sort of defended and have asked people not to draw similarities between the two, but the similarity is uncanny. What has happened is that they have withdrawn, and the position that the Taliban are in today, it has not happened by default. United States has played a very important part where the Taliban are in the position that they are, because when they initiated the negotiations and engaged the Taliban, the Americans were the first to sort of keep the Afghan government out of the situation. Yesterday in President Biden's speech, he squarely blamed the Afghan government, the Ghani government, Ashraf Ghani himself, and the fact that the Afghan forces collapsed in front of the Taliban. The truth of the matter is that United States invested in Afghanistan, be it treasure, as they are putting it, or blood, without any intellectual insights, without getting to know the ground realities, or just working perhaps against the ground realities. And when it dawned on them that this is an endless war or an endless game, they chose to withdraw, and they withdrew in a very chaotic fashion, which has created a lot of ill will.
So, Dr. Baqai, you're of the view that it was the whole foreign policy, particularly when it came to Afghanistan, of the previous U.S. administration, starting from President George W. Bush and later on Barack Obama and President Donald Trump, and now President Joe Biden. It was somewhere faulty and was against the ground realities. I'll come back to you with a couple of other points that you've just mentioned. I'll go to Mr. Naqvi. What relevance or similarity do you see between the statements of President George W. Bush and now Joe Biden?
Well, you see, let's not be very, very focused on just these statements, because these are comments that are put together at any given time for a whole variety of reasons. What I want to emphasize or bring out is that the entire experiment, the structure, the edifice that was created by the Bonn Conference of 2002 has come crashing down after nearly 20 years. And interestingly, the major party that should have been in the Bonn Conference as an Afghan stakeholder, the Afghan Taliban, was kept out. And also interestingly, a major neighbor and next door neighbor and an important country in the region, Pakistan, was also kept out. Bonn Conference was an artificial construct. It was a construct that had all the appearances of a system, which meant presidential elections, constitution, parliament, officials in the bureaucracy, whatever have you. And yet, it was an artificial edifice which was actually without a base, without foundation, and therefore, in due course of time, it could not withstand the pressure of time and of natural forces. Now, the Taliban have come in without any opposition from any quarter in any district or any province, and they've just marched in as if there was nobody around. So this shows that the people of Afghanistan are so supportive of the Taliban that they did not have to do anything to, I mean, they did a lot, but it was not in real terms waging a real war. So interestingly, they are now in control.
Mr. Naqvi, would you elaborate in detail about this particular thing, of whom that particular vision was the brainchild?
It is, I think, a vision that came out of the neocon philosophy of a superior approach of considering themselves superior to the rest of the world, and to be able to think that they can determine what form of government, what shape of things would be allowed to exist and what would not be allowed to exist in any part of the world. Now, this is a delusion. It was a delusionary philosophy. It was a delusionary approach which resulted and was manifest in Afghanistan and resulted in whatever was done in Afghanistan by the Bush administration, which I elaborated a little earlier on. So this delusion had to meet its eventual reckoning with the reality. And this reckoning has come now, and the entire sort of idea has been proved totally wrong.
Okay, Mr. Naqvi, so I'll go to Dr. Baqai. Dr. Baqai, as Mr. Naqvi has just said, that this very concept of having a vast vision about Afghanistan, as you already mentioned, the thing which was aspired was against the ground realities in Afghanistan. Where did this basically idea come from? Did it have the imperialist connotations with it?
Well, I think when United States chose to do what it did, it also had the arrogance of being the only superpower at that time, and it was also in a revengeful mode, and it plunged into the situation in Afghanistan without realizing that what the same land had perhaps done to the British and the Soviet Union. The realization started to dawn, but I think what actually triggered the paradigm shift in U.S. foreign policy or U.S. thinking was the rise of China. And now China actually openly acknowledges the fact that United States got stuck into these endless wars and poured trillions of dollars into it, allowed China to quietly grow and challenge United States, not just on the economic front, but on other fronts also. And that came as a rude shock, because its status as the only superpower of the world stands openly challenged. And more importantly, even if you go back to the speech last night that President Biden made, he actually made a point that Moscow and Beijing would be very happy. He didn't exactly say Moscow and Beijing, but he said our opponents would be very happy to see us engaged in Afghanistan, continue to stay engaged in Afghanistan, and they know that it's endless and it is draining on our economy and on our military. So I personally think that the paradigm shift has happened because U.S. does not perceive terrorism as a direct threat to U.S. interest anymore. It has taken the requisite sort of undertakings, if I may use the word, from the Taliban that Afghanistan's land will not be used against American interest. That is the only one condition they have put to recognizing the new regime in Afghanistan, and they want to move on to counter rising China, maintain their status as the only superpower, and just disengage from Afghanistan. And if you see how things are shaping up, I think there is also a thrust to disengage from the Middle East. So all the endless wars that U.S. had engaged in and was realizing that it's not getting anything out of it, it wants to now move out of them. And like I said earlier, Biden is completely committed to doing this, is not ready to commit any more soldiers to Afghanistan or do a reverse on what they have done. The only thing that they want to send their soldiers back in is to evacuate the Americans or perhaps their allies in Afghanistan, and they want to just want one sort of commitment from the Taliban that American interests will not be targeted, and the Taliban have kept their part of the promise. Not one American soldier have lost lives in Afghanistan despite the escalation of violence on the ground and the use of violence as a bargaining chip by the Taliban. They only threatened them once with targeting them when there was this messaging that the new American government may not continue with what Trump has committed. So from 1st May he went on to perhaps end of August, but it was unconditional withdrawal. Trump had put some conditions there, but Biden actually went for an unconditional withdrawal, and it was calendar based. It's actually being perceived as a cut and run, if I may put that.
Okay, Dr. Baqai, I'm being a little curious when you talk about the realization that didn't exist in the U.S. administrations about the ground realities over there. When we, again, I resort back to the book by Henry Kissinger, The World Order, when he writes that Afghanistan has less been a state in a conventional sense than a geographic expression for an area never brought under the consistent administration of any single authority. Then he goes on to quote Winston Churchill, as you have just also mentioned, a quote from 1897, in which he said that except at harvest time, when self-preservation enjoins a temporary truce, the Pathan Pashtun tribes are always engaged in private or public war. Every man is a warrior, a politician, and a theologian. Every large house is a real feudal fortress. Every village has its defense. Every family cultivates its vendetta. Every clan its feud. The numerous tribes and combinations of tribes all have their accounts to settle with one another. Nothing is ever forgotten, and very few debts are left unpaid. I mean, having so much understanding of the ground reality by the former serving high-ranking officials, how could the U.S. administrations make such a big mistake?
I mean, it was something that was like a quagmire. They kept sinking into it deeper and deeper. And like I said, when they initiated it, they were completely drunk with American unipolarity and arrogance. And that's what happened to Soviet Union, by the way. They thought that they will be able to pull it off, and they couldn't. And it actually triggered the disintegration of Soviet Union. And that is why I think China is playing far more smartly than the previous three powers. The China was the first country to agree to work with the Taliban, not against the Taliban.
Okay, Dr. Baqai, I'll take this point to Mr. Naqvi. When Dr. Baqai talks about the role of the regional countries, I mean, when she talks about this unconditional withdrawal by President Joe Biden, and at least Donald Trump had some conditions, do you think there was a threatening tone which was adopted by President Donald Trump, which helped push the regional countries, particularly Russia, China, and Pakistan, on a single page?
So I request you to say that again. What pushed all on the same page? I missed that.
The threatening stance of former President Donald Trump when he had the hardline stance on Afghanistan particularly. So it pushed the regional countries, including China, Russia and Pakistan, in the more or less same position.
Yes, I think so. I think that you see the situation for the countries in the region, which means China, Russia and Pakistan. For them, the peace and stability in Afghanistan is vital for greater regional connectivity, for regional interaction, for regional commerce and regional base for a hub for various activities. So there is also the question of the Central Asian states and all that. So the perspective of the regional countries is different from that of the United States. Donald Trump took a position of, well, let's go back to Bush and then Obama and then Trump. So they all were looking at Afghanistan with their own administration perspective, with their own staff and aides and officials, including the think tank community in Washington. And they were trying to craft policy which would suit their own ends. They were not that much interested in Afghanistan per se. They were more inclined to implement their own ideas and to see how they work out. Now, so these are two different perspectives, that of the regional countries and that of the United States. And perforce, because of Donald Trump's attitude and his position, the regional countries tended to think alike. And I think today that need is for greater regional coordination, regional consultation. I think China, Russia and Pakistan can work together, like, you know, the Troika Plus meeting in Doha, because we as a country directly affected by Afghanistan must bring in the Chinese and the Russians to weigh in, to play their role in this area and in regard to Afghanistan for the betterment of the entire region.
Okay, do you agree with Dr. Baqai when she says that China actually at the very moment acted very pragmatically and they issued a statement that they are ready to have cooperative relation with the Afghan Taliban?
Yes, I think yes, that is a very positive indication and a positive development, because China has reacted very constructively to the situation.
So do you think that happens to be a matter of more concern for the Americans?
Yes, I mean, Americans have lost out in Afghanistan. Now, if they want to continue believing that they can have influence in Afghanistan, where they have abandoned the Afghans without any ceremony, I think they are sadly mistaken. They should worry about the influence of the of other countries growing here in this region, because they are out. They are a lost bullet that has
okay.
just not delivered.
Okay. Dr. Baqai, when we talk about that very statement by Henry Kissinger, I would want your take on when we see that statement from the Taliban perspective, that in history, the area never was brought under the consistent administration of any single authority. As of today, we know for a fact that the Taliban in Afghanistan control more area as compared to the area they had under their control back in 2001. Do you think they have the capacity, with all the different factions and the groups over there in Afghanistan, which are concentrated in different geographical areas, they would be able to have or establish a central authority?
You know, I'm going to put a counter question to that. We can indulge in this hypothetical debate endlessly. But please tell me, what are our choices? What choices does the international community or the regional powers have? Tell me one country who is ready to commit boots on the ground in Afghanistan today. I don't think even the United States is prepared to do that. So perhaps we all must learn to work with one entity which now is politically savvy. We are hoping they will keep their word, the promises they've made during the Doha talks, and bring some sanity to the land we call Afghanistan. I mean, I don't think we have a choice. I am watching the Western media. They're very, very critical of what the Taliban may do and how perturbed they are about human rights. But which one of them are ready to get in and control? The country that was in there for 20 years actually handed over the country to the Taliban, the entity that they had marginalized, got into talks with them, almost facilitated their coming back into power, and got out. That is the ground reality. And more importantly, I know all of us have this element of skepticism about the Taliban, but what is happening in Afghanistan right now is interesting to note. Yes, there is chaos. Yes, there is governance failure. But at the same time, there is no civil war. In fact, Taliban are, for now, giving very positive, politically acceptable statements. The spokesperson of the Taliban actually sat down with a female news anchor to speak to the people and requesting them not to panic, telling them that security and order will be maintained. And at the same time, a power sharing formula is being also worked upon. We should have no inhibitions in accepting the fact that the face of Afghanistan tomorrow would largely be Taliban. But if they are in a power sharing formula and incorporate the ethnic landscape of Afghanistan into their governance model, because now people tell me that Taliban also not 100% Pashtuns. At least 15% are other ethnicities. All of these are positive indicators. And I'll come back to the point where I say we don't have a choice. So the best option is to cultivate the Taliban so that they remain engaged and we are able to restrain them and sort of nudge them towards the norms of international law. So, rather than marginalizing them, blaming them, pointing fingers at them, isolating them, which then allows them to take a trajectory which none of us can prevent them from taking. So that is my take on the situation.
Okay, so Dr. Baqai, from this very premise and the arguments that you've just made, I mean, you've just alluded to the fact that they have sat on the Afghan television with females and they are also ready to go into a power sharing formula and they must not be left isolated. So does this actually depict that they have learned the lessons?
I don't know if they've learned the lessons. I think they're more politically savvy. They have matured. They are not just a group of tribals that we dealt with 20 years ago. They have reached in several capitals now. The situation that has unfolded now has happened because China engaged with them, Moscow engaged with them, United States engaged with them. They established themselves in Doha. And today, if you look at the messages and the signals that are coming out from various capitals, all of them are about engagement. Of course, they want to put some conditions there, but at the same time, they want to engage with whoever is in Afghanistan. Nobody wants to jump into the situation.
So, Dr. Baqai, I'll take this point to Mr. Naqvi. Mr. Naqvi, there is a very cliched statement, if you may allow me to say that past is the key to the present. When we see the behavior or the kind of things the Taliban in Afghanistan had been doing in the past, and the couple of things, the facts, now after they have retaken the capital Kabul, somewhat they seem to be a little different, because they've appeared on the TV with females, and they are also ready to have a power sharing formula. Do you think that cliched statement would come into effect after once they have got the legitimacy, or they have really changed in fact and have learned their lessons over the last 20 years?
Well, that is still to be seen. I think the indications are certainly positive, and I agree with Dr. Baqai that what choice do we have? So there is no choice about whether to accept the Taliban or not accept the Taliban. The Taliban are a reality, and we have to live with that reality. Now, if they are cooperative and conciliatory and friendly to others, to us, to others, I think that would be of mutual benefit and mutual advantage. However, there can be many problems. I think we have to deal with a situation where different people have different views, and there are those who do not entirely agree with the Taliban. So all said and done, the state has to take a positive and a constructive view, and I think that has been done by the National Security Council in its statement yesterday, which is very balanced and forward-looking, positive. We should give the Taliban the period or the time to work out everything. They will have big challenges, especially in the economic field, also in the diplomatic field, because they have to deal with somewhat negative perspective of their entire character as many countries see them. And the economic challenges are enormous. They will have to sort of, because the old Afghan government, or the government that has just lost power, was entirely dependent on foreign aid. There is not much generation of production or of resources inside the country. So these problems are there. I think we have to look at it and see how best we can deal with this situation. And actually, happily, Pakistan is not negatively inclined towards the Taliban. Generally, people here are willing to give them the opportunity to work out their problems, and we have said that it should be an all-inclusive and sort of national arrangement where all these stakeholders have their share of the pie. So I think things look good, but we have to see how they develop in the future.
Okay, Mr. Naqvi, Dr. Baqai, what's your take on this? The National Security meeting yesterday, and they came up with the statement, as Mr. Naqvi has just alluded to, that you've also been of the view that we should not leave the Taliban in isolation. So building upon that particular resolve again by the National Security Committee over here, that there should be an inclusive and non-political process in Afghanistan and non-interference. How do you expect Pakistani authorities to engage if there happens to be an Afghan-led political settlement and government over there?
Well, you see, Pakistan is in a very tricky position, because in the past, Pakistan was scapegoated for everything that went wrong in Afghanistan. And for the United States, the relationship between Pakistan and US has been contingent to how the situation has unfolded in Afghanistan. So even when Pakistan was engaged to cultivate the Taliban, to bring them to the negotiating table, Pakistan was actually petrified because they realized that if these negotiations bear fruit, it would be okay. If they don't, then Pakistan would be blamed for the failures. Having said this, Pakistan has tread very carefully, and we have constantly put forward our point of view, which is, one, we are facilitators of peace and not guarantors of peace. We can only control the situation on our side of the border and cannot be held responsible for the failures of NATO, American forces, and the Afghan government on their side of the border. We've also fenced the border. But more importantly, what we've put forward is that this is shared responsibility of the regional powers and global powers. And Pakistan is committed to play its role as a bridge builder, as a state that would put its part in conflict resolution, but at the same time will not become a part of any conflict, so to say. I think Prime Minister Imran Khan has articulated it very fairly and has stuck to his ground. While doing that, we've also drawn some red lines for the United States. And we are now working with peripheral powers to bring peace in Afghanistan. We are doing everything we can, which includes the operational side where evacuations are being done by Pakistan. Our embassy in Kabul is still open. Moscow's embassy is open. Unfortunately, the American embassy has shut down. So Pakistan is not shrinking away from its share of responsibility, but it also wants to put across the fact that it is a shared responsibility. And of course, last and most importantly, Pakistan cannot afford to have more refugees on its land. And that is where we have drawn another red line, where we would want the refugees, if an influx happens, to be held on the Afghan side as internally displaced, or when we follow the Iranian model, where we keep them confined to camps. But we are still processing visas. So movement in Pakistan through visa process is still on. I don't think Pakistan could have been more flexible and accommodating than this. And we will continue to provide support to Afghanistan. The Turkmen border is working. But at the same time, Pakistan can't be held responsible and blamed for what is not happening in Afghanistan. I think we need to put that across. Will we recognize the new government? We've like all important capitals, civilized capitals of the world, we've said that if Taliban keep their word, if they are respectful of human rights, if they're respectful of women's rights, if they're respectful of constitutionalism and their legitimacy to the Afghanistan's takeover by the Taliban, Pakistan will also recognize it.
Okay, Dr. Huma Baqai, with this very point, I'll come to the conclusion of today's segment. Dr. Huma Baqai, international relations expert, thank you very much for being with us. And Mr. Ali Sarwar Naqvi, former ambassador. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for your time as well. As our experts concluded that it has to be the shared responsibility of not only the regional powers, but also the international community to work towards a peaceful Afghanistan. With that point, we come to the end of today's Newswire Afghanistan special episode.